Let me start this off by telling you a story about psychology. There was once a psychologist named Ivan Pavlov who gained his fame from a very specific experiment. In this experiment, Pavlov tested mental conditioning. He did this by ringing a bell in front of a dog and then immediately feeding him. After many repeated bell ringings and food-z's, Pavlov found that the dog would drool at the sound of a bell. This is what's called conditioned reflex. Like dogs, we are victim to the same sort of conditioned reflex. Ever heard the Taco Bell gong and suddenly felt hungry for a taco? So we are programmed to have knee-jerk reactions to these certain images, smells, songs, or sound effects that we've been conditioned to. And that is why I made this list. After playing a beloved game long enough, it'll only take a small sound effect or a jingle to get us in the mood to play that game. I was going to call this my top 7 list of sound effects or jingles that get me in the mood to play those certain games, but top 7 Pavlov games sounds a little better. And it's a little shorter. Growing up, I loved my N64. Every weekend, a few of my friends would come over and play the hell out of it. We would usually rent a new game every few weeks, and every time we would specifically grab for the game with the 4-player logo, so that no one was left out. And that is exactly how we discovered this game. After we picked it up, we spent countless hours flying around and blasting the shit out of each other. After coming back to this game again and again, that haunting intro song really started to get in my head. Now, every time I hear that song, I really start to crave that insane 4-player action. Speaking of insane 4-player action, but this was more my college days rather than my childhood memories. I used to bring my PS3 on campus when my friends and I would hang out, and Castle Crashers was always the game of choice. No matter how indecisive we were, when we heard that little jingle, we were ready to crash some castles. Anyone who's played an Elder Scrolls game can tell you that these suckers are addicting. When I first started to get into Skyrim, I would spend every waking moment on this game. And every time I would start this game up, I would hear this. And it wasn't the camaraderie of my friends this time to make it memorable. This time, this chant actually kind of startled me. So, now every time I hear this little chant, I feel compelled to play Skyrim. Simple as that. A game with great atmosphere will usually have a pretty powerful impact on you. And GLaDOS's iconic voice is that type of atmospheric audio that makes a game like Portal so memorable.
As part of a required test protocol, our previous statement suggesting that we would not monitor this chamber was an outright fabrication.
See what I mean? That voice makes you laugh.
The Enrichment Center promises to always provide a safe testing environment. In dangerous testing environments, the Enrichment Center promises to always provide useful advice. For instance, the floor here will kill you. Try to avoid it.
It makes you cringe.
You did it. The weighted companion cube certainly brought you good luck. However, it cannot accompany you for the rest of the test and, unfortunately, must be euthanized. Please escort your companion cube to the Aperture Science Emergency Intelligence Incinerator. You euthanized your faithful companion cube more quickly than any test subject on record. Congratulations.
And it makes you fear for your life.
Congratulations. The test is now over. All Aperture technologies remain safely operational up to 4,000 degrees Kelvin. Rest assured that there is absolutely no chance of a dangerous equipment malfunction prior to your victory incandescence. Thank you for participating in this Aperture Science computer-aided enrichment activity. Goodbye.
GLaDOS is pretty memorable, that's for sure. Anytime I hear that voice, I instantly have the urge to pick up a portal gun and make my way through the Aperture Science Center. Okay, this one's a bit more complicated. Let's just go with this. See that? As soon as you hear that, what are you expecting? Street Fighter? Super Ghouls and Ghosts? Mega Man X? Mega Man Soccer? There were a ton of games released for the Super Nintendo that were produced by Capcom, and each one of them had a special little jingle as soon as you turned on that game. Until the N64 era, I only owned a Super Nintendo, and being a rabid fan of Mega Man, Capcom made up a good chunk of the games I played in that era. So every time I hear this little jingle, I get in the mood for those awesome Super Nintendo games I grew up with. Okay, I might be a little repetitive with this one, but as much as I love Capcom games, I love Konami games so much more. There were far fewer gems in here than the Capcom collection, but those select few are so much more memorable to me. Games like Contra 3, Castlevania, and most of all, Turtles in Time were some of my favorite and most frequently played games on the Super Nintendo. To this day, I still go back and play Turtles in Time just to waste an hour or so. And every time I play it, I hear that memorable jingle, and I was pumped for some Konami games. Moving past the Super Nintendo era, Dance Dance Revolution played a huge part in my gaming history. And Konami decided to keep that old jingle in the beginning of their games. I don't know if they really use it much anymore, but every time I hear it, I get in the mood for those classic Konami games. And yes, this did beat out Capcom because of DDR. You're really recording me play DDR? Hate you.
100 combo.
If you grew up in the 90s, there was no avoiding Pokemon. The anime, the card game, and oh so many toys were all there to remind you of how awesome the video game was. Is. And that's just it. That is why this is my #1 Pavlov game. Pokemon, as a company, has made it their purpose to be positioned as #1 in your mind. That's why things like Digimon seem so old school, and Pokemon is staying so fresh. Yeah, I guess. But I'm getting a little sidetracked here. I would say that out of all these things that make me crave Pokemon, it's really the classic intro theme that really gets me pumped to play any of the Pokemon games. It doesn't matter which one. Once that intro hits, I just know I gotta catch them all.
Gotta catch them all, gotta catch them all! Yeah!
Huh. I wonder how much all this marketing has affected my head.